Okay, so what we're talking about with this video is sampling. And this is one of those topics which I think we need to just clarify which type of sampling we're talking about first. In the audio industry, there's a number of different things that we use the word sample for. And so I want to make sure that we're really clear what we're going to talk about here. Because we have the sample rate, which is like a digital audio term. We have the use of somebody else's music as like a part of your new track, which is a form of sampling. And then we have the creation of an instrument, a digital instrument, using audio files that we've recorded from like the acoustic version. And that's a version of sampling as well. So that's the one we're talking about. And in this, on the screen, you'll see this piano. We record a note of it, and it goes into the computer. And then once we have that recorded, edited, and mapped, we can actually push a key like on a MIDI keyboard or, digital keyboard, and it goes into the computer, and then the computer plays the sound of the original piano. So that's the sampling process we're talking about. And we're going to specifically be using the samplers inside of Logic. We have several of them, but for this, we want to really keep things simple. So we're going to use what's called the Quick Sampler, and this is a really powerful tool that is designed for ease of access. So for instance, I'm going to open up my loop library here and just find a drum kit of some sort. We'll do something jazzy perhaps. Cool. And I'm just going to drag this onto the header, and you'll see we have our quick sampler, original and optimized. And so without getting into too many details, we're going to use optimized because it's going to prepare it for some of the things we can do with sampling. And it pulls it right up here. Okay, awesome. What we have now is that loop in this format, and it analyzed it and said, you know what? I think this is the slice type. That means it's a file that we could go through and trigger now with all of these notes. So I'm going to play on my MIDI keyboard here. And it plays those little slices. Well, we don't always want it exactly on every transient because sometimes we cut off things. So I'm going to come through and do beat divisions from the mode. And I'm going to do a little bigger divisions like this. Division 1, or let's see, I think we're going to stick with the 1. Because then okay, cool. Now I can actually come through and play a bunch of different patterns, and all of those are going to tie in together. So the mode is really important. It allows us to decide how we're going to slice it up. Now this slice mode, or the overall slice area, is just one of these 4 overall categories for this sampler. Classic, that's just like saying we're going to just be like a classic sampler, but in this case that means the entire file is attached to the key. If I play a higher key, it goes faster and higher. If I play a lower key, it goes slower and lower. And so that's the classic version. This quick sampler only really gives us that one slot for an audio file. We don't get more, or, well, we just don't get more than that. The one shot is great if we want to do some things like have a file just playing with some part of our production. If we want to put like a cymbal crash and like do a reverse cymbal, something along those lines. The one shot is probably the easiest of everything. Classic, we do have some looping. We can actually loop sections of this and then set our loop points if we wanted to loop a specific section here. and then we release and it fades away. So we can loop things, and that makes it nice for certain things. And then we have the slice mode, which we've already kind of looked at, and then we have the recorder. So we can actually record files directly into here. Well, with the slice, this is a good way to work. It allows us to take like a drum beat and recreate it to a certain extent. I mean, it's really handy. And then we have one other option that ties in with all of this, because as you can hear, with some of these, let's go back to classic. That's not as useful in the low stuff, so we have this thing that allows us to follow the tempo. And that tries to maintain the tempo no matter which note we're playing. So it may transpose it up or down or do other things. But it's going to try to match that 120 beats per minute of our overall project. Down here we have some things which allow us to modulate the sound. So we can add what's called an LFO. That's a low frequency oscillator. That's just like a pattern that we can apply to different parts of our sampler. So the target here. One really cool example in classic, let's set our loop like this. Right? So our loop is like that. We're going to set loop position as the target for this pattern we're going to do. And then we're going to do random. And then we just have to turn up the amount so that it does something. And let's change the loop so that it is just going forward, not reverse. Now it's moving randomly through this file to do that loop section based on this thing that I did right here. So I told it to do this random pattern, and I targeted it to the loop position, and then I said 100%, and now that loop position is moving back and forth. Cool. That applies in any of these. We can do different things with it, but certainly you can get some creative sounds because we have two of these LFOs and then one modulation matrix. This means, for instance, I can choose any of these sources. Velocity, that's how quickly or how hard you hit the key. And then I can say, you know what, I want, depending on how hard I hit it, is where I want the sample start to be. And so we can do some creative things here with like pitch bend or the mod wheel or aftertouch or all of these things, depending on where we want to set for the source, where we want the target to be, and then the amount. Now with this, we have this other set of options here. Pitch, we can change the pitch of various things, the coarse or the fine, and then we have overall this envelope. An envelope is a shape for how this is going to work. So we have an envelope here for the pitch, we have an envelope here for this next section called the filter, and then we have this envelope for the amplitude or the volume. Let's start with this one because this is the one that may be the most obvious. It's going to change how loud it gets, how quickly. If we put it all the way at the very beginning, it just starts full volume. If I give this little shape, then it's going to work its way into full volume. Same with the pitch. So I can change the pitch over time by using this envelope. Or we have a filter here, which is like a synthesizer tool, and we can actually change the filter information here using this envelope. So short and sweet, we have different things to change how this overall thing is sounding. Pretty cool. Let's see. So with all of this, I think what the last thing maybe perhaps to look at would be the settings menu. So we can do an auto loop and a bunch of other optimization things to really fine tune what we've done here. This is a lot of information, and I think perhaps instead of talking about all of them, I just want to hit on a couple of them that are really the most relevant. One of them would be the ability to create a drum machine designer track. If we go to slice mode, then that becomes active and we can actually create a drum machine designer track. It does it out here. Here is the new drum machine designer. And then out here, it's going to play all of those files in order. Each of these notes, there are MIDI notes, targets the part of the drum file here that we have. So this first one targets that, and you can see it is C1, and this is C1 here. This would be C#1, and that's C#1 here, etc. all the way up. So these little boxes target each of these inside this sampler. So now we can actually program this out here on the notes, and that's pretty cool. Okay, so that's one of the cool things that we can do with this, like that. Let me show you another example, because I do think that there are some other things that are worth looking at. I was earlier today, let's see, did a little video here with a toy piano, and I just played each of the notes while videoing with my phone, and so that's going to be the sound source for the next thing we're going to do here. Let's come through. All I want to do now is import this movie into Logic. I think it's in my downloads, so let's grab it here. There it is. Airdropped it from my phone. So easy. And then we'll convert that over. So now I've got this here, and we have the rest of it here. So let's see, we're going to just delete the little bit at the beginning there because I knew that I did a false start on two of the keys. Those ones right up there. Okay, so I've got this file, right? What I'm going to do is create two different instruments with this. The first one, click and drag, I'm going to do Quick Sampler Optimized. It thinks, and then it pops it out. So it knows it's slice mode because there's a number of different notes. I'm going to leave it in transient because I didn't do it in time, but I'm going to adjust the sensitivity so that we have essentially one transient per each of the notes. Oops, let's see, I got missing one right here, so let's pop that up. And yeah, I was worried about it. The beginning one sometimes does a duplicate, so I'm just going to delete the very first one. Okay, so now I've got this piano and all of the notes for that. So there's a couple things I want to do right off the bat. One of them is I'm going to put this in gate mode because I only want the note to play while I'm holding the key, and if I let go I want it to fade out. When I have a single file like this, I don't want it to play into the next note at all. And then I think I'm also going to do the follow tempo flex time option, so that way whatever the tempo is, it'll keep, it won't make it super high pitched, or it won't speed it up at all. It'll keep it try to keep it the full note. So that's pretty easy to do. Now, if I want, I can do something like an arpeggiator. So let's put this over on the side a little bit, and we'll put this up here. Let's see, yeah, we don't have double notes. So I can use an arpeggiator, other MIDI effects, and really create something interesting with this. So that's pretty cool. This is one example of how we could use the quick sampler by using a video like this, recording each of the notes being played. And I didn't make any mistakes throughout this, but it's a super easy way to do this. And then I can import that sound in, drag it on here as an optimized quick sampler, and just simply adjust the sensitivity with the transient mode, and I've got a full instrument that it can be played. You can actually play chords with this. It's not just the one note at a time. So we can do various things with that. The other example that I wanted to show you was taking just one of these notes. So perhaps let's zoom in a little bit. So I just want to do one note. I'm going to drag this over and optimize it into a new quick sampler. And you can see it's just one note here. I'm going to get that right up to the beginning. And now I can just use this one note and create an entire instrument off of it. And I'm going to do a similar thing with the follow tempo. And there we have it. We could even do a loop if we wanted to in the middle of this, although it's not going to sound really, this is not an instrument that's designed to be sustained. But I could. So you can see I can actually create a portion of the instrument which actually gets held out and can play forever. We can actually add a little fade here so that it fades and is a little bit smoother. And if we need to do other things with this, we can. We can, for instance, retune this. Things like that. Okay, so you can hopefully begin to see some of the real power of sampling. How I can take a recording of just a toy, an instrument, with my camera and import that in and turn it into a full instrument. Or I can take just one note of that and turn it into a full instrument. And then you get to do some things with crossfades and looping to fine tune that. We get to do creative things with our modulators down here. And we can really create some interesting things with that. There's really a lot of power in this quick sampler and what it can do. So I think overall, this is a great tool that we can explore. The next step of this would be the full sampler, and we're going to do that in a separate video. Okay, so this is the quick sampler, and you could see all of the different components with that. There's a lot more probably that we could talk about and learn, but I think we showed a couple examples of things which are pretty typical of how we might use this, and then we'll go on from there.